Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Brandi Michelle. Brandi and I are going to be talking on the topic, the 4 beliefs that lead us to fulfillment and success. How many of you know that it's your beliefs that run the show, right? It's your beliefs, it's your thoughts. And a lot of us have limiting beliefs. So that's basically what Brandi and I are going to be talking about specifically, maybe for the business minded. So definitely stay tuned and listen to how you can first become aware of these beliefs and then start to change them. All right. So welcome, Brandi.
Oh, Myrna, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yes, I'm excited too. Awesome. All right, so let me give you guys a short intro to Brandi. Brandi is an intuitive and empowerment coach who spends her time guiding others and facilitating energy healing, focusing on building the subconscious capacity. She has extensive experience working with high-achieving female entrepreneurs, helping them align with financial success while staying true to their values and purpose. While they might initially come to her to scale their business and make more money, they leave with a deeper sense of fulfillment within their lives on a holistic level. Yes, the complete package here. Awesome. All right. So, Brandi, as we dive right in, I'm very curious. Can you share your backstory? What led you to begin this work? When did you notice a lack of fulfillment, maybe in your own life?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So, I was raised, as many people are, to be very goal oriented. My parents were amazing in, kind of helping me to chart my course and set lots of goals. And I was very fortunate to be someone who excelled at many things, right? So I have had a really impactful career in the corporate world, where I escalated to being a VP covering the United States and Canada. I was a national caliber athlete in college and tried out for the Olympics. And so I realized that I had really checked all of these boxes, right? I live in an amazing city, in a home of my dreams. And so I checked these boxes of achievement, and then I sat back and realized that I'd always had this idea that if you checked all the boxes, achieved all your goals, that happiness would be kind of the outcome. And unfortunately, that's just not true. And I think many people come to realize that that they've had the success that they've dreamt of and not been able to align kind of with this inner fulfillment and inner purpose. And so I took a step back and said, what's missing? And I really came to the conclusion that, happiness needs to be its own goal. It needs to be its own purpose in your life. And that when you focus on happiness as an outcome, or as a goal versus an outcome of other achievements, that's really when you align with your purpose and find true fulfillment. And so that's when I took a pivot in my life and got to the place where I am here today with you.
Wow. Listen, I've heard this story so many times. And in fact, my very first coaching client when I became a coach was someone, similar to your story, and she realized that, she wasn't looking for happiness. She was looking for this inner fulfillment. And she quit her job and became a coach because for somehow that is, people get more fulfillment when they serve. And I think that her path to her fulfillment was serving and not being in the corporate world. She was doing very well. She had the husband, the kid, wealth, the job. You're right. But, underneath. And I've heard that in so many different conversations. But the first thing I want to do is circle back to when you said that happiness you shouldn't need happiness to be an outcome of a goal, that happiness should be your only goal. So I can't leave that alone. So how does someone listening set the course to have happiness be their goal? What is the path to that?
Oh, I love that. So I believe fundamentally that when you have high achievers, that it's really easy to make happiness a goal because they're used to aligning to goals and really like knocking it out of the park. And so I, through my own work with myself, which took place over many years prior to becoming a coach, really developed a 4-step process that I call B.A.S E. And I think it's foundational to everyone's life. And so really, B is about beliefs. Like, what beliefs do you have, especially the ones that are limiting in nature, and how have you gotten to that place as it pertains to happiness? And the reason I use happiness versus fulfillment is because I think that you have to be happy to be fulfilled, right? Like, if you're not happy, if you're fulfilled, you'll always be happy. And if you're unhappy, you'll never be fulfilled, right? And so happiness is oftentimes easier for people to align to than like fulfillment, because fulfillment feels so big. Like, what is my purpose? What am I meant to do? But if we think of life as these moments, and every single moment we're seeking happiness, then ultimately we'll live this really full life that has a sense of purpose, has the service that you mentioned. So the B really is about like, what are those beliefs that are precluding that from happening? The A is alignment. Like, so kind of vibrational alignment, what does happiness look like to you? Like, oftentimes you ask people that question and they just don't know. They're like, I don't know what makes me happy.
It actually is tied to those goals. They might think, if I get married, I'll be happy. If I have a big house, I'll be happy. It's usually tied to the goals. You're right.
Exactly.
So they probably can't find happiness outside of those goals. That's interesting. Yes.
Exactly. Right. And so, what does it look like and what does it take for you to be aligned to it? So we spend some time around that. And then self-awareness, really, because ultimately we are co-creating our reality in every single moment. I think oftentimes we talk about manifestation as this idea of like, I'll manifest a husband, a house, weight loss. I'll manifest all of these things. But when you take a step back from that and realize that like, your entire life is a manifestation, not just the good things. And then you really like take back your own power. So how do you create these situations that are out of alignment for you? What are you choosing that pulls you out of homeostasis? And like, why are we returning to that same place over and over again? And so that's really what the self-awareness allows us to do. Because once we create awareness, we can move out of searching to really having kind of this path to our destiny. And then the E is about emotional regulation. And that really is the biggest of them all. Any moment of unhappiness is really correlated to this origin story that we have, right? And so there are these times in our lives when we were probably really little where we were given these ideas about who we were, our identity, and how we showed up in the world. And oftentimes we're looping around those situations. And so it can be big T trauma, it can be little T trauma, but the goal is really to kind of keep the memory of our experiences of our childhood, but really to release those dense emotions. And then we can move into this much better space. And so I believe that, again, B.A.S.E is foundational to our lives. And once we are able to harness kind of those 4 pillars, we're really going to skyrocket from there and live a life.
Well, that's a good path. I love it. But as I'm listening to you, I always remember, because I've done lots of episodes on my show about happiness. Yeah, happiness formula, the happiness, because everybody's end goal in life is to be happy. You're right. And it's a little different from fulfillment. So I'm glad that we're separating them. But one of the things that I always return to, because I'm glad that we started off the conversation by saying that in the Western Hemisphere, we are usually happy if something that we aspire to be is happening for us, right?
If it comes to pass,
count out millions of them, and our happiness is tied to that. But when you go to like India, for instance, I watched a movie called, I think it was even called Happiness, where they showed people that had nothing. They were sleeping on tents on rocks, not even a bed, not even a mattress. And they were happy just to be alive, maybe, and happy because their children were okay. So how do we separate that? I mean, what happened with you, for instance, when you decided that your happiness wasn't tied to all that achievement? How did it happen for you?
I mean, I think it really happened to me by achieving everything I wanted, right? Like I had this literally like the husband of my dreams. I had this beautiful child. I'd, won many awards. Like in my corporate career, I always ran sales teams. I never finished below the top 15%. So I had this kind of like body of work that was everything I ever dreamed of. And I was a little girl from Detroit. So like I didn't have this idea that my life could be so big and be so vast. And then I sat there and I said, but there's still something missing, right? And I think that's why when you did my introduction earlier, you said people come looking for money. People come looking for something solely because they believe that something will bring them happiness. And I was no different. And so I was this human who had really the good fortune in this lifetime to achieve really all that I was looking for. And I think it is in that space that you come to realize that what you were really looking for was the happiness that you believed would come from it. And I don't believe that people kind of get happiness at the end of those goals. I think they get excited, right? Like you get really excited that you've achieved this goal and you're like in that moment. And then you realize like shortly thereafter that excitement dissipates, right? And then that excitement dissipates. And then you set this new, more audacious, this bigger goal and you're searching and you are on this loop. And that loop is constant, right? And then when you step back and you realize not only am I on this loop, but this loop is fraught with friction, right? Like it's not an easy loop, right? Especially like as a person of color or as a woman, because you have all these other beliefs about what that path looks like and who's going to support you on that path and who's going to be rooting for you and who's going to be rooting against you. And these are thoughts, right? And we can choose different thoughts that create new beliefs and put ourselves on a new path. And I was fortunate enough in this one lifetime to be able to do that, to be able to step back and say like, I have created this reality for myself and I can create a new one. And to your point, there are so many societies that don't believe that there is a one-to-one correlation between achievement and happiness. And we have created a collective consciousness that believes that. And the irony of it is that we believe it, even though almost everyone that you speak to, like if you actually ask them to think about it critically, will step back and be like, yeah, that's not true.
Yes.
Right. Like you'll never get pushback. You can go to a million dinner parties and say like success doesn't equal happiness. And everyone will be like, you are so right.
Yes.
But they don't get off the rat race. Right. And so you have to intentionally step back from that and say, I am going to forge a different path.
Right. Okay. So it's true. It's very true. I'm reading a book now from Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. And in there, he talks about, he equates it as two ways. He says that there's clock goals and there's psychological goals. So the clock goals is just saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm 30. By the time I'm 30, I'm going to be married or something. Or you're talking about being in a corporate world with goals, and you have to be in the top 15% of the teams. Those are clock goals. But if you say something like, I'm never going to be happy or fulfilled or feel successful unless I'm married, something like that, right? Which means that your happiness, your fulfillment is tied to this goal, right? And basically what he said is that even if you do achieve this goal, but what happens is you're never happy until you achieve this goal. But when you achieve the goal, it only lasts for, like you said, a couple days, because it's a psychological goal, and the psychological goal is always moving. The target is always moving. So that's one way to put it. But I've heard it from so many different ways, like you just said, and you mentioned it. You hit the nail right on the head, is that the the happiness is fleeting. You know, it's like you thinking that, you know, if you've got this really fancy car, right? And you dream about it and you visualize it and you have all these goals and you drive it. And after a week, you don't even notice that.
No, what you actually notice is how many other cars the same are actually out there in the world, right? Because that is the confirmation that our brains lead us down here. Like, oh, there's a million of these BMWs. There's a million Mercedes, right? Like suddenly you're like one of the pack, right?
Yes,
It's
like
not unique
pack,
to
right?
you.
It's
Yeah.
no longer, yes, this
Not
is actually
special.
very important because a lot of people would tear people down and you know, destroy a lot of relationships trying to climb the ladder of success to get to this goal. And when they get there, they found out, oh, you know, their life is empty because the relationships and all the things that they give up to get there. So that's awesome. So one of the questions I had here for you is what is the phenomenon going on where a lot of people are, you know, living the life of their dreams like you, and they're still feeling unfulfilled. Why are we feeling unfulfilled? Do you think that it is because we're not serving? Do you think it's because we're not connected to God? What do you think is in your research that is the fulfillment is lacking?
No, I agree with both of those. And so I would say that first and foremost, I think we have to reinforce for our younger generations this idea that you really can find fulfillment through any path as long as you love the reason. And there's many different ways to be of service. And I was with someone in December. I didn't know her well, and you know, she achieved a lot of success, and she was a bit older than me, so she had an older child, and she was saying, you know, that her daughter wanted to be an artist, but that she was only going to pay for her daughter to go to college if she like kind of picked these 3 majors that she thought were like money making majors, right? And so I didn't know her that well, but you know, me being me, I pushed back a little bit. But I think that there is this idea where, especially in America, we're putting everyone on this path of like financial success, right? Like it is the most important goal of all time, right? And you know, even for me, like being raised, I was like, my parents took like out of the, you know, what I think it's like world's news report and world's best colleges, whatever it was, and they put it on the fridge and they said you can go to any of these colleges. Anything else would be uncivilized, right? And so it was like, if it's on the top 20 list and you get in, you can pick it. If it's not on the top 20 list, apply if you want, but you're not going to be able to go there, right? And so we all have these ideas of what success looks like, and it's through no fault of our own, right? Like we have passed this down for many, many generations. And so I think we have to really embrace that the best way to find joy is to follow your heart and follow your passion. And that passion, I believe, is given to you from a higher source, right? And so every job in this world needs to be done. And so someone has to do it, right? So we can't hierarchy the roles, right? Like we need some people, you know, to be the street sweeper, and we need some people to like build the roads, and we need some people who can like pay to have all the roads built, right? Like we have to have all of these roles. So I don't like to say like something is better than another, but I do agree that in all of those roles you have to believe that you're being of service to other people, and that idea of service has to really be the through line of why you do it, right? And so when you have that sense of service and you know that the road and the path that you're on is God given, and it can be like connecting with your higher source. It can be that you believe in infinite intelligence, you believe in the divine. You don't have to like believe in kind of, you know, God, like from a religious perspective, but you have to know there's something bigger than you in this world. And that which is bigger than you is in partnership with you around what you're meant to do and how you're meant to give in this lifetime. And I think when you follow that path and follow your every intuition, you'll never be off. You'll always be aligned with your true purpose.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. Yes, if you've got the connection and you feel that you're moving in the direction, and it's funny you used the word alignment a couple of times, but the way we follow our alignment is when we feel good. Whenever we're feeling bad, we know that we're off alignment. We're moving away from our purpose and moving away from the direction that we're supposed to be going in. So
right.
Yeah, so that's
you got to
amazing.
ask yourself, like, am I following my intuition or am I fearful? Right? Is fear guiding this decision? Right? Like, I fear that, like, I won't have success. I fear that I won't have money. I fear that this won't work out. Right? Like, so that kind of fear and idea of scarcity, sometimes people take that to mean that that's their intuition, but that's not your intuition, right? God doesn't guide us through fear. God guides us through love. And there's this real true path. And it feels, to your point, it feels so good to walk that path because you know it's ordained for you.
Yes, right. Yes. So fear doesn't feel good. So whenever you're feeling fear and a knot in your stomach or something, if you're a conscious being, you will stop and pay attention to that and recognize that, maybe I'm going off of alignment. So, right, this is not taking me down the right path. Right. Okay, awesome. So we already talked about B.A.S.E, and how those are the steps that you teach your clients in order to find this happiness end goal. So what are some of the practices that we can use, or listeners can use, to fulfill our sense of self-worth and self-love? And I'm getting that that's one of the things that's in the B.A.S.E, even though I didn't hear you say that earlier.
Yes, I think, well, B.A.S.E is kind of like the foundational practice around beliefs, right? But like one of the belief or two of the beliefs you have to have is that you are worthy of having the life that you're seeking, right? And so I say to people all the time that if you show me your life, I'll show you what you think you're worthy of having. Okay. And so self-worth is like really pretty straightforward. But I think the challenge is I once had one of my group coaching sessions, and it was around self-worth, and I asked the group kind of like, what's your definition of self-worth? And as I went around kind of our Zoom call, like everyone identified self-worth as this idea like external to them. It was something that was bestowed upon them from like the broader community based upon actions. And so I think we're in a society that doesn't know that you are intrinsically worthy of that which you're seeking, right? Like you would not be seeking it if it wasn't meant for you, right? And so if again, like I said earlier, if there is something in your consciousness that you would like to align to and you have a good reason for it, then it was meant for you and it was ordained for you. And then you have to know that you are worthy of having it. And the work is really like realizing like what happened to me that made me believe that I wasn't worthy of this life, right? And so when you love yourself deeply and know that you are worthy, you will more easily align with your goals. And so there are three things that I recommend to everyone, right? Like if they cannot afford or they don't have the time or can't make the time to work with Myrna or work with me, the three things that I think every human should be doing is really like one, meditating, right? So like taking this real quiet space to reconnect with yourself. That's what meditation allows us to do, right? And so we have these kind of 4 brain waves, and we're constantly working at beta and we're sleeping at delta. So we're in this beta state, we're in this delta state. So we're either awake or asleep, and we don't really spend time moving through alpha or theta. And so if we can quiet our brain waves to this alpha or theta state, we're really in this place of communing with our higher self, communing with source, communing with God. And that's going to allow us to know, like when you have that direct connection with the highest version of yourself, then you will know that you are worthy, because it is such a beautiful space to be in. And so I tell people, like, really learn to quiet your mind. The second thing is journaling, right? Because there is a real profound impact to our subconscious when we take pen to paper and really like let ourselves like clearly state kind of why we are in the place that we are in. What is it that hasn't allowed me to know that I'm worthy, to know that like I love everything about me. The more that you love yourself, the more the world will love you. There was a time when I was younger where, you know, I didn't think that I was very beautiful. There were lots of like ideas about beauty in the world, and I didn't really think that I aligned to that. And that's how the world showed up for me, right? Like, because basically I was sending out a message to the world and it was sending it right back to me, because the world's really just a mirror of your beliefs. And then when I turned that on my head and I was like, no, I am really beautiful, and I like accept that for me, and not more beautiful than anyone else, but also not less beautiful than anyone else. And as I go out into the world now reflects that back to me. You know, people will stop me, people will say something, but that's my own inner love being reflected back to me, right? And so the more we can get out onto paper, right? Because that's the first step of manifestation, right? Like out of your head and into the world. And so we get that journaling out and we start to really have these like deep conversations with ourselves through this writing experience. We again align with self-love and can align through self-worth. And then last but not least is really this profound gratitude practice, right? So as you're seeking to shift your life, if every single time you get something, you pause and you have a sincere moment of gratitude, and not where you're just like, thanks, Myrna, but you're really like, thanks, Myrna. I like loved being on here today. I really love the part where we had the conversation about our subconscious and our beliefs and about self-worth. And you're really like saying, what about this was impactful for me? And you're saying, thank you for that. Then your life is going to shift, and you won't need support. It's beautiful to have people hold space for you. I think you can shift more quickly that way, but there's so much of this work that can be done on our own.
Ah, that's really good. That's really good. So I love it. So yes. So let's circle back on a couple of things. So one, yes, you're correct. Self-worth and self-love, you know, they're two big things. We package them together here for simplicity. But yeah, self-worth and self-love, I'm glad that you said that people feel self-worth is what has been communicated to them, and it's usually in childhood or early adulthood. Somebody looked at you and called you ugly, or you know, somebody said something to you and it stuck. And even though that you might be the ugly duckling that turned into the beautiful swan, you're still considering yourself as an ugly duckling. I was watching this movie the other day with The Rock. Mm-hmm. And it was The Rock and Kevin Hart, and they showed it so really beautiful, because in high school, The Rock was fat and people were laughing at him and they, you know, whatever. And here he is, this beautiful sculpture. You know what he looks like now, this beautiful sculpture of a man. And when he looks in the mirror, he still sees this fat person. So yeah, self-worth and self-love is always tied to what you're getting from the universe, right? And it works the opposite way too, because like you said, when you turned on the thought that you were beautiful, the world saw that, because we have aura, we have energy. And I always talk about my best friend in, you know, when I was really young, I looked at her and didn't see an attractive person, but she walked around like she was the most beautiful and that she had it going on, and people responded to her in that way. Absolutely. So it's always the energy you put out. Now you ended up talking about, you know, meditation and journaling and gratitude, all things that I practice. And I practice them not necessarily for the end goal of happiness, which is a byproduct, but I practice them with the end goal of my thoughts, clearing my thoughts, clearing my energy, not being in the space of lack and struggle and things like that, but being in the space where that I'm grateful for what I have now. I'm grateful for, you know, the relationships, what God has given me now, what I'm doing right now. And And I'm meditating because you're right. When you've opened up source, then you get, if you listen, you'll get back guidance in the form of intuition and things like that. So yeah, those are great practices to build your happiness capacity, as well as building your self-worth and your self-love. So that's awesome. All right, so let's focus a little bit now on some of the limiting beliefs that women, Black women, or the people that you encounter have that stops them from feeling fulfilled.
Well, I mean, that could be an entire hour conversation in and of itself. But I think
Yes.
just broadly speaking, we have this collective consciousness around kind of what's possible for women, and this collective consciousness comes in many forms, right? So there's kind of this consciousness of the United States, which will talk a lot about the glass ceiling, about this idea that like women and men can have the same actions and the responses are different. And then we have kind of our familial consciousness, right? So things that we grew up, that our family is telling us about what is possible for us, and maybe not even telling us, but we just see, right? Like oftentimes we believe we are capable of achieving that which our family has achieved. And we see that in the data, right? Like only about 5% of Americans will end their life in a significantly different socioeconomic status, but also just geographical location than where their family started, right? And so these ties are invisible, but they're so strong, right? And then we have cultural consciousness, that where we all have these ideas about, like someone from my ethnicity, my background, what is it possible? What type of jobs do we have? And how much money do we make in these jobs? Like, how old are we when we get married? Like, will Black women get married? There's all of these things, right? And so then when you think about it, right? So now then we just have like the world consciousness, right? So the world has these ideas of what's possible here on the planet. Then we take it down to the United States, and then we take it to our culture, then we take it to, our family, and all of these consciousness are really weighing on us, and they really impact our beliefs about what we think is possible. And we have to take a step back. So one consciousness that my family had, my dad used to always say, the more money you make, the more money you spend. And so I found myself like, I would just like shop till I drop, right? Like I'd make all this money, and then I was like, all right, I'm out here, like
Your
I'm going to get
dad
this
told
bag
you that?
and do
That's
this.
terrible.
I mean, I'm not going to call it terrible. I think we all just do the best that we can, and I love him dearly, right? But these are these ideas that we subconsciously and without knowing pass on to our children, right? And we've all gotten them. And so I had to take a step back and say, wow, I am really like embodying this idea, because you don't know any better, right? And you think it's just like something that someone's saying in passing, but it is wired into your subconscious because you've been hearing it so long in your life. And so I think like these ideas of like even, right, like that Biggie song when I was younger, more money, more problems, like all of these things, right? And I've had people say, like I had my admin say to me the other day, she was like, but don't you think, Brandi, the more money you make, the more problems you have? And I'm like, I absolutely do not think that. And I am unwilling to believe that as my reality. Right.
That's a
and
money
so,
block. Yep.
right. It's these money
Mm-hmm.
blocks. And so we have these ideas of how life should be. And the brain is so powerful that it continuously proves us right. And so whatever you know to be your truth will absolutely be your truth. And so what we have to do is step back and say, is this true?
Right.
Because it is universally true, or is it true because I've made it so? And I think if you are able to find two people that have a similar circumstance, but a different reality than you, then you can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is only true for you because you believe it. Right. And we can start to, make changes. And I say this always with the caveat that we are not ever absolving bad actors of being bad actors, right? Like there will be bad actors, but they are ultimately preying upon people that are having these beliefs about what their reality will look like. And so this is why we see people who break the glass ceiling. We see people who like have these really beautiful relationships, even though they grew up in circumstances where people didn't really have beautiful relationships. And we see people who are very thin, whose families were perhaps chubby, because we can change our beliefs and change our thoughts to walk a different timeline than that of our families, that of our surroundings. But we have to do that with intention. And when we do it with intention, then we can really like be the rule breakers that show other humans what's possible.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, everything you've said is definitely true. Because yes, specifically in communities, whether Black or brown communities, you will find that you have 3 generations that are in the same financial circumstances, right? Nobody breaks out. And I believe one of the reasons this show is about mindset is because in order for you to break out, you have to have a different mindset. You've got to say, well, I'm different. I'm not going to be like my family. I'm not going to be, for me, very young, because my mom didn't get married until she was very older. My grandmother never got married. And at a very young age, I said, I'm not going to have any children without being married. And that was my goal, because I looked at, my family and I says, I'm going to be different. And that's what's the start is of, you're in an environment where things happening, whether it's alcoholism and struggle or, poverty or whatever it is you look at and you say, you know what, I'm going to be different. You were very fortunate that even though you grew up in Detroit, it sounds like you came from a very empowering family. Your dad said that you're going to go to the best schools, and they built you up to be the person that you wanted to be. My husband, on the other hand, comes from a totally different thing. He has aspired to be the top of his class, to be successful. That's what he calls it, right? But his parents, they grew up in the farm and they don't know how to read and write. So they didn't push him. He had to push himself. You know what I mean? He had to have the mindset of, what, I want to be successful. And that's how you normally break the mold. It's all about mindset. And when you get the mindset right, then you start challenging the beliefs, like you said, you're challenging the beliefs. Like you said, hey, you know what? Women could never do this. It's amazing how we're breaking the mold. I was leaving my house today and I saw this woman get out of a truck with tools, and I had to look at her and says, wow.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? But and that the thing becomes, right, is that we can change it for generations. Like that is how impactful changing your mind is. And so I say to people all the time, right? Like when my husband and I do a ton of philanthropy around like, how can we support and scaffold, students and people that look like us to have this better life. And people are like, oh, like, how did you get here? And it's because my grandfather went to college, right? And he like drove a bus to go to college, like, and in a time where like Black people did not go to college, and like his mom was a teacher, right? And so when you come from this long line, and then on my husband's side, the same, right? Like his dad retired at 50 as an executive, and his mother is an estate planning attorney. And so when you have these generations of successful people before you, which oftentimes Black people do not have, then you are already on this trajectory, right? And so I know that the more that I can change my mindset, I impact my 6-year-old son to have a different life, because he will now automatically pull in these beliefs, and there will be some he needs to change, but far fewer, right? And so every generation is this real big domino effect, right? And so my neighbor 2 doors down is like, I've had 6 generations of my family that goes to Duke. Like, when you have that
Wow.
amount of success in your
That's
family,
nice.
it is inevitable
Yes.
that you will perpetuate that. Now, that's simply financial success, but that really allows people to have the ability to change much of their lives when they have resources, right? And so
Right.
what I say is, the work that we are doing, the work that you do, Myrna, this work will perpetuate itself for a very long time, for generations to come, in this really beautiful way. And so when you talk about the sense of purpose and the sense of duty, it is our responsibility to make these changes, to ensure that women and people that look like us have this kind of far-reaching ability to align with their purpose and their love and their happiness, that they won't have to seek in the same way. And so it is kind of a privilege of a lifetime to do this work and to know the far-reaching implications of it.
Yeah, well, thank you. That is basically my intention, because I was born poor, and I know what a poverty mindset is. When you have a poverty mindset, you really can never be wealthy, because even if you have the money, you have a poverty mindset. So my whole work, my whole philosophy is, changing your mindset, because once you change your mindset, and the Bible says it, do not be conformed, but be renewed by the renewing of your mind. So your mind has to be renewed. And once your mind is renewed, then your lid changes. Because as a coach, you already know that we are the lid. We go as high as we believe that we can. So once we open up that lid and expand that lid, and not be conformed because of her sex, because of her color, because of her religion, because of all the things that, that hold us in this little box, then we have seen a few of the people that, that are in the space right now, that tell you, Eckhart Tolle. I talk about him all the time, because it's just amazing, where he came from. He lived in the streets for 2 years before he became enlightened. You know what I mean? We all has to be, we all can be the caterpillar that turns into the butterfly. And it's just doing the work, and not saying, hey, my mom never did this, or my dad never did this, and I'm not going to do it either. Or even in your case, a lot of times you can put pressure on the kids and say, hey, you know what? Your dad was an attorney, your mom is a doctor, and you'll do something with your life, and they don't want to.
Yeah.
It really happens that way, but
motivated, right? Yeah, there is always. Yeah.
There's a few. All right. So I think we're almost to the end now. So tell us about your B.A.S.E coaching and your framework. How can the listeners get in touch with you? Talk about your website, your social media handles, and because you do good work. So yes, this is amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Myrna. Well, I think I'll publish a free journal on the 1st and 15th every month, and you can find that on my website, www.brandymichelle.com. It'll be in the show notes. And also, I am just on the precipice of launching a group coaching program, and you can also go to my website and sign up there to be informed about that group coaching. And if you were interested in working with me one-on-one, or with the membership coaching, and then if you were interested in working with me one-on-one or in the group, you can also find that on my website. So, and all my handles are Brandi Michelle on Instagram as well as on Facebook. So I'd love to connect with your listeners and hear from them.
Yes, that's amazing. All right. I love when people have the same handle, the same information.
Makes it easy.
It makes it easy. It makes it easy. So, Brandi, yes, this was a very illuminating conversation. And I'm sure that our listeners are listening to, and they're saying to myself, wow. They should be saying, wow, you mean I'm not gonna be happy when I get this, or when I get that, or I get that? Yes, like you said it. You go to any meeting and you talk to people, and they're going to tell you, no, it keeps moving. Remember in the olden days when everybody wanted to be a millionaire, and then they became a millionaire, and nobody's happy with being a millionaire anymore. Then they want to be a billionaire. and then they got to be a billionaire, and then they're still not happy.
Yes. I live in San Francisco. That is a true
Yeah.
statement.
Yes. And
Money
that
does
means,
not, and they only want to be a billionaire because they believe that it
yes,
means something. But there is
yes.
nothing there's very few things that you need to be a billionaire to have in this lifetime.
I know, but I'm just using that as an example.
No, it's
When
a great
you talk to
example.
people and they want to be millionaire, now millionaire is nothing,
Yes.
But yes, I'm using that as just an illustration
It's a
of
beautiful
the
illustration.
thought process of happiness and where you want to get to. But yeah, so we've eliminated that success and fulfillment based or psychologically tied to achievement and goals, even though we're not knocking money, because you need money to do most of the things you need in this world. But you also have to look at the things that Brandi was talking about in her base beliefs, right? So and also you have to be connected to a higher purpose, and that's basically how you find your joy and happiness. And that kind of joy and happiness is not found in things that you have, because when I was growing up, I heard this statement that I'm going to say it now, but it's just for illustration, not that everybody wants to be that, but barefoot and pregnant. So what what our culture was meant to say when they say that is that you can have nothing and be happy. And a lot of times you can. The people, like I said, in that happiness movie that had nothing, they're happier than those billionaires. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was what they have on the inside, and family and relationships and all those different things. So
but I think one thing I forgot to mention, Myrna, that I'd love to just slot in here is this idea of like, what you're meant to align to will actually come to you easier when you're happy, right? And so I didn't talk about, right? So like when you're happy, I think of life as 3 pillars, right? You're going to align with that pillar of financial resources and career. When you're happy, you're going to align easily with whatever your pillar of wellness and health is. And when you're happy, you're going to easily align, with that pillar around your relationships, both, romantic relationships and general friendship relationships. And so all 3 of those pillars fall into line much more easily when you're happy, right? And so it's not like you're forsaking success for happiness. It's just that you're thinking of happiness as the umbrella that really allows you to more easily align with everything else.
That's true. That's very good. Yes, how you feel affects everything. And happiness is a feeling. It's how you feel. It's your energy.
You don't have scarcity, you don't have fear, you don't have these really dense emotions that are actually separating you from aligning with your goals. And so when you have these high level emotions of happiness, joy, peace, and then you're going to have ease and flow in your life, and you're going to more easily align to all of the things that you're seeking.
Yes, the law of attraction. You're attracting them to you. So that's amazing. I love that. Yes, great way to end it. It's very true, right? Yes, it's the umbrella. It's how you bring things to yourself by how you feel, and the energy that you are putting out there, right? So that's amazing. All right. Well, listen, Brandi, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was well timed and beautiful. A transcript of my conversation with Brandi will be on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us. I will link out to her website. I will link out to her social media handles so that you can just click a link and you will be able to get to her page. I know her name is spelled a little different. So yes, you need to, head to the show page, and I will definitely link out to it. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. This was an awesome example of what you can achieve when you transform your mind. Your life is transformed. Brandi, once again, thank you. Any last words before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say this conversation has also been illuminating for me, and I'm grateful to spend this time with you and with your listeners. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you. All right, guys. If you're listening to this on iTunes, would love for you to rate, review, and subscribe. If you're listening to this on YouTube, would love for you as well to subscribe. And until next time, namaste.